Welcome to Radical Remembering with psychologist
Dr. Norissa
and Dr. Bukky.
This is a weekly conversation where we explore the ways we've internalized oppression and consider what it really means to be liberated.
Each episode will leave you with intimate knowledge of the liberation process, sprinkle a little healing magic, and leave you with wisdom for your journey. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Radical Remembering. This is our final episode for this season, which we are calling, what are we calling it? Our culminating episode. What are we calling it?
It works for me.
So part of what we are certainly interested in doing is talking a little bit with each other and with you all about what's changed for us since we started. I would really love to hear from you all and hear your stories too about like what's changed for you as you've like followed us and like listened to the season. So make sure you hit us up on our handle. I mean, I'm like not the social media, so I'm just letting pass it to you so you can like give people the information, the proper information of how to hit us up.
On any of the platforms on the website, radicalremembering.com, or else, what are you again? The real Dr. Bukky?
The official.
Sorry. The official Dr. Bukky, or me at Dr. Nurse Williams on Instagram, where we post about the podcast. So just, looking forward to hearing what's changed for you.
Yep. All right, so let's get kicked out. Let's kick off this episode. You want to start, or Norissa, should I start with you?
I'm interested in hearing your journey because we were at different starting points, right? And I know the interesting thing is that you perceive me as having been, because you mentioned it in the last episode, like I think you think that I'm further along on this journey than I am. Literally, we're coming in on the close of a year in this journey for me. So it hasn't even been a year. But this is just how much happens when you step in and when you enter into that space. But I'm curious to hear, like, what has these conversations been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I started, I can't remember if we had started this. We hadn't started recording when I made the choice, a decision inside of me that I wanted to start to like engage in ancestral practice, right? Had we started recording yet?
I don't think so. I think that it was just like starting to like bubble.
Maybe we had the conversation that we would do the show, but but we hadn't started recording. And then I was like, I had this experience and I was like, oh my God. So the fact that like I had my first reading is like, that's huge. Like the version of myself that was in grad school is like, you did what? So that's really cool. I think this piece around like just being able to like listen to people like yourself, to listen to like Cynthia, to listen to Simone, to hear my uncle's stories, like all of it. I mean, I think all of it has like, I think the word is like deeper affirmed for me, the value of this conversation, the value of this construct of radically remembering. I think that, I keep feeling this openness and longing to engage even deeper. And this is why, like, I think whenever we have these guests, and I think even with you, Norissa, I'm constantly asking, like, from a concrete perspective, exactly how do you start to lean more in? I went on I went on a vacation. And before I went on vacation, I was telling you about my interest in doing a ritual. And you told me about this ritual to do, which I did, right? Wow. I did. I know. I don't think I updated you. I had an apple and I like gave an offering in the water. And so it's just, but one of those things, like I really love this conversation we had last episode with Simone of just how, because, I used to identify as Christian, and I was a very strong Christian. So in some ways, the practice of like sending prayers up and like talking to someone I don't see or to energy isn't foreign to me, So I felt very at home when I was in conversation, right? And this is what I loved about that thing you were saying too, again, in the last episode, of being able to discern your own voice versus the voices of like, of spirit. Right. And so I don't feel like I'm not 100%. I mean, I think when someone was saying this piece around like paying attention, listening, I didn't even tell you this the other day, Norissa, is like, I had, first of all, I got my car detailed. I haven't ever got a car detailed. I've never understood why people need to get a car detailed.
Me either.
It's just like, just like what? Anyway, our car. So I don't know if the audience knows. I have two children, and my car. And I'm not. By the way, I'm not a car person. So people should just understand this. And I'm not even like I'm somebody who can actually also. I have a high capacity to tolerate mess. But our car, since we bought this car in 2021, I think we washed it only one time. And inside of it, it was just crumbs everywhere, just like junk and garbage everywhere. And it was one of those like things where like it's the idea of cleaning it just overwhelms me. And so, and when you go to the car wash, they do like a haphazard job. And I didn't want a haphazard job. Anyway, I went to this place, by the way, if anybody in New Jersey, Just Mac Auto Detailing. The name of the dude is Delon, who owns it. He is amazing, amazing. So Norissa, like literally, I spent my little money on this, and I was like, oh, now I understand why people get their car detailed. Like you get your car and you're like, this car looks like a brand new car. So anyway, that's part of what the addiction to. So I understand that. But anyway, the piece that I was really interested in, Norissa, that like having the story is that, and I haven't done anything about this yet, but I met this man, and there was just something about his energy around his spirit. And I was just so like, his spirit felt so kind. His spirit felt so kind is the word that kept on coming up to me. But I left there and I said, I'm supposed to be in this man's life.
Reading
I'm
his.
supposed to. I don't know what that means, Norissa, but this
Mhm.
piece, I was like, it's like, I sent a text to Dana. I was like, Dana, I think I'm supposed to be in this man's life. And Dana, of course, laughs. Dana's my wife, y'all. Dana, of course, laughs because she's just like, she just thinks I'm like, like doing my crazy thing. But I feel this thing inside of me to like text. And Norissa, I'm not texting random people, but I want to text them and be like, I think I'm supposed to be in your life. But I don't know why, and it feels crazy. But my point, the reason why I'm saying this is going back to this previous episode of what Simone was saying is about listen. It's about listening. And I don't know what that means. Like I said, I haven't taken any action on it. But listening to her talk in our last shooting, I was like, oh, I wonder if I need to like act on this thing, because that wasn't my own voice. That wasn't me. Like, I don't know this man from anywhere. I think he's a nice guy. He's like a sweet guy, but like other than getting my car detailed, like I don't have any, like, we don't need to right? But there's a sense inside of me that I'm supposed to be in his life.
Mhm.
So anyway, I think things like that, like this piece I think what's shifted in me is just continuing to feel like clear around the ways. I mean, that thing that Simone was saying, also like last when you and her were in that conversation about Catholicism, right? And just the way that like, yeah, why is it that like when you think about the Catholic religion, right? All the ways in which like, I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. We would have said like Catholics like were engaged in like idol practice, right?
Mhm.
But all of those things, like the point she was making is like there's a piece around like, but once it is from us, right? Once it is sourced from like Black and brown folks, this piece around then it being that's rooted in anti-Blackness. So why are Catholics okay with doing that? But then when we talk about ancestral practice, when it's really the same thing, why then is there more reactivity to that? So I think that there is a piece around like just feeling more affirmed around just the costs of colonization in all of us, and feeling more open to claiming my own journey, claiming my own
Mhm.
way, right? And really wanting, audience, I don't know if y'all know this, but Marissa takes all these different courses that she's constantly learning. And this is why, you're saying, I think you're so much far. I do think you're so much far ahead in terms of like your study, right, Narissa? You're studying, you are learning, you're intentional, you're investing time, right? Like, so I do think that you are further along in this journey. Like, if you try to say like I'd be like, get out of here with that. But like, but I think that's what I'm talking about. So, but I know what you mean. I also know what you mean by like that comment too. So I do think that the piece that's shifted in me is a continued like affirmation around like claiming what belongs to us, and claiming our own practices and tuning. And the piece that just feels the most is like this piece around like tuning my own ears to better hear not only myself, because there's a piece around like better hearing my own self and trusting my own self, but really making space to engage with like our ancestors, with spirits, and like to have openness to that. I do really think that those things are ways in which I am shifting, that like a version of me even 3 years ago would have been like I would have had like I have questions, right? Whereas they're like when Simone's sitting here talking, I don't have a 10,000 parts of me that's like trying to poke holes. You see what I'm saying? There's more of an acceptance. I think that's what the key word is. There's more of an acceptance in me. So I don't know if does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, it's been beautiful to witness on the outside to see, you know what I mean? Because the question, I mean, I don't know that you have all the answers that you've wanted or needed or hungry or curious for, but I think that that's a good place to urge you and to continue to motivate you to reach for the answers. But to be on the outside looking in, I don't know. I feel honored to get to like witness your journey like firsthand and see how things are changing. And so I would love to see where you are a year from now. Also, I want to say that the way you said study just now, that I've never heard you say anything more Nigerian, like the way you pronounced it. And the other thing that I was thinking, like, I just, when I say like so far ahead, I'm not 10 years in, you know what I mean? And so, because it could be intimidating to other people thinking like, well, she's been in this for years. Even hearing Simone, like, yo, this is like 20 years deep for you. You know what I mean? It could be thinking like, oh God, it's so far off. So, I think it's so meaningful to say like, well, a year ago, you just, I probably even less than 11 months, 10 months ago, maybe like 11 months ago, I would have been the same, like, okay, so how do you differentiate? How do I know that's them talking to me? How do I know? You know what I mean? And actually, one of the first times when I felt like I heard an ancestor talking to me was October 13th. My grandfather, actually, my grandparents had the same birthday, but my grandfather is deceased. And it wasn't a talk. What it was is that I felt him hug me. Like, I was saying like happy birthday in my morning meditations or whatever to him. And I could feel him, like I could feel like a prickly hug. And he used to hug us every night before, and they raised us. So I grew up in the house with them. And so every night before he left for work, he worked overnight, he would give us like a hug and I would feel the prickliness of his beard. And I was like, and I saw his face. I had seen his face like a close-up image. And that was like my first communication. So think about, it's only been a handful of months. And I feel like it might be encouraging to hear like 11 months from now, you might be like, yeah, when I was talking to grandma, she said, so yeah, so I do feel I do feel like I also do draw from my own spirituality practices before I began ancestral veneration. So I will be clear and honest about that one as well. But I don't think that you're far behind.
Yeah. Well, heard, but I think this is the piece that I think maybe you is the word. You gonna laugh at me again because I'm gonna use that word again. Study. But I think there's something about practicing, and there's something about right, but there's something about studying. And
yeah. This
so
is true.
so that piece that you do, I mean, like I said, I'm very new to this journey, and we already talked about this. My way is usually like just more from like a living practice, right? But there's something about somebody who takes the time to really study. Every time I say it now, I'm gonna laugh. To study like what you're learning, to understand you see what I'm saying? Like to have a conversation with you, Norissa, about this, even though for you it's like this has been a year. I imagine you talk about this as somebody who's had multi years, right? Because of the fact that you're like deep in learning and taking in information, and you know what I'm saying. So that's the part I'm really honoring, is just like your consumption of information and your integration of that
Mhm.
information into your practices. In a way, my point is like as somebody who's six, like from like a real time perspective, has been like practicing however long, there is an extra thing that you are doing that
Mm.
boosts you,
Okay.
right? So I'm really like trying to honor and really affirm in naming it that way.
I feel like you gave us two keys. You named two keys for us, right? Consumption and integration, right? Because they're two separate things. Like I could be taking, first of all, you could have person A and person B, me being person B, and what I put in a year and someone else not having put in anything. I mean, that was probably me even earlier in life. And so there are two different outcomes or endpoints based on what you're saying, right? But that has been those have been the keys, right? This hunger of wanting to know and having taken courses, having read books, having it built the, altar, engage, having sought, readers, diviners when I need more guidance and more confirmation and, really just doing those things. So that consumption, like you said, and then the integration, because that part is so important too. And for me, that's when I use my journaling, right? Because we have so many thoughts that go in and out of our heads, right? And so if we don't anchor them and I anchor them by writing them on the paper and go back to them, like I going back to them is what also helps me like integrate. And I go back to notes and, Simone had said one time, like, you really practice. She heard another interview that I did. She's like, you really study. And I was like, yes, the hell I do. I don't play. I go back to my notes and I look at it.
Nurse, as you were just speaking, it's like, it's one thing to remember. It's one thing to be in the process of remembering, but there's this thing about the radical remember. And I think
Mm,
the way you engage this work, you are the embodiment of that. So I,
mhm.
I I think that piece around the radical part, not just the being radical in what we're doing and all that, but it's like the way in which you're like learning, the way that you're like bringing it in, all of those things. I really think like when we think of, and to your point, like I really appreciate what you're saying, right? Is saying all of our journeys don't have to look like Narissa's journey, right? And there are ways that Narissa's built that like invites you or brings you to the way you do it. But to me, I feel like you're my model of what it looks like to be radically remembering. It's like you are hungry for it, you are seeking it out, you are engaging, you are cultivating. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
like, that's just like, yeah, that's an affirmation that I'll certainly like offer.
I
Is
love that.
the radical to the like. I feel like I'm trying to remember, right?
Yeah.
But radically remembering. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I love it. You know what also that brings me also back to liberation, right? So I've also made this space to do it. So I would not have had this space 5 years ago, right? And when I say I made this space, I made a choice from a place of liberation of stepping away from capitalism. Well, I haven't completely stepped away from capitalism. I'm a business owner and I still do stuff and I charge and different things like that. But the ways in which white supremacy and patriarchy have said you have to be busy doing this, and this, and I've stepped away from that by prioritizing me in a way that I've never prioritized myself before. Actually, in a way that I haven't prioritized myself since I was a teenager, right? And it's so hard to do as a parent. It's so hard to do as a spouse. It's so hard to do to prioritize any of those things. But if it wasn't for my taking that radical step of leaving a full-time position that, it looks amazing on paper, if it wasn't for that and my saying, I'm not one, I don't want to be complicit in my own oppression, right? And so that's why I left the job. She's not going to be complicit in her own oppression. But also, if I'm moving away from, what am I moving to? Right. And so it's been my wanting to move to, but also even before I did begin this practice, because I have had practices of meditation and it was just more sparse and more random where I heard spirit before. In 2020, they told me that their words were, you're going to university. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Right. I got more clarity as the year came and that there's going to be 2 years of learning, right? 2 years of intense learning. And then as time went on, they told me what I would be learning about, right? And so it's become more clear since my ancestral practice and since I'm more deliberate and intentional about how I use that space and that time. And because I have a friend who says they give you crumbs on a trail, right? So it's so deep, right? This is why it's fun for me because it's fun, but it's also like this is so wild. This is an adventure, but it keeps me engaged too, right? Because my ancestors, spirit, guides, angels never cease to amaze me. And like what's next for me, like what's going to happen. And so yeah, you get a little, you eat a little, you get a little bit more, you eat a little bit more. So yeah.
Tell Narissa, tell the audience for you, like since we started this, what is it, 9, 10 episodes ago? Uh,
Yeah.
9 episodes ago, like what's changed? What's changed for you, or how have you been changed through this?
How have I been changed, right? how have I been changed? So it's interesting because I want to say that there's nothing specific. Well, okay, one amazing change it has been like even witnessing someone else's journey, right? So witnessing your journey and then other people in my life who are now like, well, how do I do that? And how do I do that? And how do I move from this to that? And blah, blah, blah. And being able to turn in my Christian days, in my teenage years when I used to listen to lots of preachers, I remember TD Jakes said, the kingdom of God is about telling one beggar where you found a piece of bread, right? And so I always hold to that, and I hold to that in my work as like a counselor, as a teacher, as a whatever. And it's also a very humble thought, right? And so the meal is not cooked yet. I can't give you a full cooked meal right now because I don't got it. But what I can give you is a piece of bread. Like so my piece of bread is like, well, this is what I've been doing. Let me share this with you. Right. And so that's also really gratifying to be able to, I don't have the full picture yet. I don't, I'm on my journey. You know what I mean? And so to be able to share crumbs of bread, to be able to witness and hold other people as they, as they seek to, because I've been put, and sorry, this is, I'm like, I have 50 thoughts at one time, like always. Right. So another thought that I want to say is that I didn't know that we walked into this having the intention that the majority of the podcast this season would be about ancestral practices, but it has been, right? And I appreciate the fact that we've been sensitive to that leading into that guiding because it's a way of liberation, not the only way of liberation, but an important path of liberation for at least me in this part of my life. And so now I'm like, wait, what was I saying? But point of the story is what's different for me now is that I'm taking a deeper dive. Ritual is super important to me now. And so I'm learning rituals and being more intentional about practicing rituals. And I had that little aha moment when we were speaking to Simone last episode that ritual is a mechanism of liberation, a mechanism of going back to the land, of going back to like your culture. And so is a mechanism of decolonization, right? And coming back home. And so that has been like really important to me. But community means something more. And different to me, right? And it's so like you're always learning stuff and having, like these aha moments, and you think that that is the last aha, and then it gets brighter. The bulb gets a little bit brighter. So what it means to be in community, and I hope all of our listeners that you feel a part of this community because we feel you, we want you as part of this community and to share these kinds of discussions but also capitalism, white supremacy, all those things have forced an isolation on many of us, and I'll speak for myself, on me, that has caused that disconnection. That's traumatic, right? That dismembering, that disconnection. And so I'm coming back into community. And so lots of the classes I'm in like 5 different classes right now, whether they're related to sacred sisterhood or ancestral healing or shape shifting your ancestral lineage through storytelling. I'm in all of these classes, but I'm also in community in ways that I would not have. I'm the one who in all throughout my schooling, I'm the one by the door all the way. I'm the first one out the class. I'm not getting too close to people because these were not spaces that were welcoming to me or that I felt a sense of belonging or home in, right? And so even that part of my reclamation, and that's what's different for me, is thinking about doing all of this in community and the healing, miraculous, magical power of community. So those things are changing for me. And even though I can't pinpoint where and what about having had these conversations it was, I sense that there is having talked loud about these things, you know what I mean, and activated the energy or vibration of these things are also part of what pushes me further in this direction.
Absolutely. By the way, my favorite word that you've taught me is reclamation.
Mm,
I'm already finding ways to like include that in my conversation every opportunity I have. I
yeah.
love that word. No, and the thing I wanted to say too, Narissa, is that when you were describing earlier around this piece around witnessing, and I do think you have a way, like I do think, and I do think that you have a way in terms of how you whether the word is offer that bread or point people in the direction, there is something about the way that you do it that takes away a lot of the anxiety that I think
Mhm.
sometimes when we think about ancestral practices because of colonization and like the anti-blackness that's rooted in it, like the reactivity we have to it, there's a way that you introduce it or offer it that makes it, I don't like this word, but it's the word that's showing up, like very palatable, that makes it make sense, that makes it make it compelling, that makes it like intrigue. You know what I'm saying? So like
Mhm.
that's one thing that I do. I don't know if the right word is like it's a gift of yours, but like when you were pointing this piece around, like when you give that TD Jakes like quote, I was like, that feels so like that resonates for me about you.
Mhm.
Way, not only just I mean, like with me, because I know that like the steps I'm taking because of my relationship with you. Right?
Mhm.
And yes, I don't even know where I want to go with that, but I do think that there's something about how you do it that I think is unique and specific to you that allows that to just not be like you can have this conversation with people, right? And you leave that just be like, oh, that's interesting, and you walk away. But there's a way that you talk about it, that you talk about your own journey in it, your own experience in it, that makes somebody say, huh, that not only is that interesting, but what would that look like for me? How do
Mhm.
I clean? How do you say, what's that word? Finding my own reclamation.
Right.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Oh, totally, totally, totally. And I think what I'm thinking is as you're talking, and I think that it's because I'm in love. You know what I mean? Like this is a beautiful relationship, and so I think I talk about it as someone would talk about it in a brand new relationship with a romantic partner. So there is like so much bubbly effervescence, like as I'm speaking about it, that makes it that much more attractive.
Mm. Being in love. You are in love. I love it. And the other thing too that I really love that you also like remind us and remind the audience is that like ancestral practice is not the only way in liberation, right? It's just one way. It's one
Mhm.
thing, right, in our liberation journey. And you're right. Somehow we have landed here where we have spent a lot of time and a lot of our conversation has been about that. And I think that's part of what our hope and our interest is being able to explore more in our upcoming season, right?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely, definitely. I have one last question for you as we close up in the next 5 minutes or so. I'm curious now. So I gave you a piece of bread, right? I was like, here's Simone's number. Call Simone. Did you call Simone? Did you call? How was it? So you were able to speak. And so I don't want you to necessarily speak about what you spoke with Simone if you don't feel like it. But how do you feel after? Like as having taken a step on your journey?
Yeah. I'll share with the audience that a part of me was very terrified about calling Simone. And what I said to Norissa, and I told one of my other really, really good friends, is like this fear that I had that I was like, I'm opening the door to something, right? And there was a part of me that was afraid. I don't feel afraid anymore.
Mm,
And in fact, what I said to you after talking with Simone, it was like it was a very affirming experience for me. And one of the two things that Simone said to me that are were really powerful is, and this is the thing again that she like said again today, is this piece around trusting my own, like being able to listen to my own self and trust in my own self. I'm always questioning, you know? And so it was real like my reading with Simone felt like very like encouraging and affirming of that. And I keep needing to keep hearing like that's a lesson and that's a thing that I have to keep like I haven't mastered that yet. I haven't mastered that yet. Right. And that's what I'm saying to you, like I want to activate around this thing to this random man, which I don't know. He's gonna be like, "Are you crazy?" Like, but it's this piece around like I want to trust. I want to trust. You know. So this piece around trusting. So I think the piece is I feel I'm not afraid anymore. I feel affirmed. And
mm,
the other thing too that I would say is like, the other thing too is that like Simone talking about that her her being in the closet when she first came, like started discovering her gifts. So Simone gave share some information with me that requires me to go back to my family to ask some questions. And I asked my mom, who is not going to be the source of the answer. My dad is going to be the source of the answer. But I asked my mom, and the question was bizarre to her. And she was like, "Why are you asking this question?" And I didn't know how to say, I spoke with a spiritual, I don't know what to call Simone. I had a struggle with like what like so I don't know what I said, right? But this conversation, this last episode, right, of this thing again around trusting, right, is this piece around like need to call my dad and be like, listen, I spoke with a spiritualist and they said, and I'm curious what shows up for you as a response to that question. So like, but this piece around, and it was just really interesting to just hear this piece around like really authenticity and just so there's just so much, but I think the piece I would say is like I feel like I'm not afraid anymore.
Mm.
And when I am behaving in ways that shows that maybe I am afraid of something, this conversation or the conversation we had season or last episode is reminding me, that's me going back. That's me like again, like going back, and that's like I need to lean in. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's this piece around like if there are folks out there, I don't even know what the word is. It's like you're not trusting your walk through the door and see what happens. So I'm gonna stop there.
I love it. I love it. But I also heard reclamation there, right? So I'm not afraid anymore. Sounds to me like I'm remembering, you know what I mean? I'm bringing back parts of myself. And because it's an ancestral practice. Your people have done it, right? And so that's such a beautiful note for us to end on, and some beautiful morsels for us to think about, because, we're all on this journey, right? We don't necessarily have a model or a whole lot of models for what this journey of degemification, what this journey of liberation is like. And so, I really love that we've created a space where we're like, y'all, this is where the bread is at, So I look forward to continuing these discussions with you, with this community, when we begin again for season 2.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, my friend, for all of your wisdom, for sharing yourself, for leaning us in, for sharing yourself, and like just again, like like letting us have access to not to the table, but like the way in which you like offer it that makes us want to come to the table. So I so appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to season 2 with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for all the love. Y'all heard all the love I got this season. Thank you.
All
Bye,
right.
y'all.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.
If you've loved what we've had to say, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform.
I'm Dr. Norissa, and you can find me on IG at Dr. Norissa Williams.
And I'm Dr. Bukky. You can find me on IG at the official Dr. Bukky.
You can also stay abreast of our latest offerings at our website, radicalremembering.com.